Thank you. Hi, I'm John Parvinsky. I'm the president and CEO of the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, and have been in this role for the last 37 years. And on behalf of the coalition and the Renaissance Housing Development Corporation, I want to welcome you today, pleased to welcome you to the grand opening of the Stout Street Recuperative Care Center and the Renaissance Legacy Lofts. This is the 22nd time that I've had the privilege and honor to preside over the opening of a supportive housing or a facility developed by the coalition to meet the needs of some of our most vulnerable neighbors. And as my retirement looms, it probably will be the last time. So if I tell a few stories from the past, I ask for your permission and forgiveness in advance. When we were constructing the Stout Street Health Center, which is right across the alley here, and the Stout Street Lofts, we got a call from President Clinton's office. He was in town for the Clinton Global Initiative, and he wanted to tour a project that had been financed through New Markets tax credits. He wanted to see how that program worked and how it could make a difference. And so he came and he toured, and he came with Mayor Hancock was there. And met with the workers and just absorbed it all and said he was really amazed that the New Markets program could fund a program as rich, serving people as vulnerable as the folks that we were serving. And he created that program, the New Markets tax program, in the last year of his administration. And then a year later we got a call and he said the president wants to come back and see how that project worked out. And so he came back on his way to the airport, this time in his polo shirt, and he was actually giving the tour to his chief of staff. He's saying, oh, this is what they do here, and this is what they do there. And it was just amazing how much grasp he had of that. We stopped on the second floor alcove of the health center, and I pointed out the window to this site. It was a parking lot, and I said, that's going to be our next project. What we want to do is to build a medical respite center on that site and then build housing on top of that. And we'll do that as long as we can find the funding and the money and the support to do it. And the president just smiled and said, I bet you will. He hasn't been back, but maybe you'll be able to show him what you're going to be able to see today. Now, 7 years later, we're proud to present the Stout Street Recuperative Care Center and the Renaissance Legacy Lofts upstairs. We're here in this 9-story building with the first three floors dedicated as recuperative care, and the upper 6 floors providing 98 units of permanent supportive housing. The project represents our largest and most complex project that we've developed to date. And I say to date, Jennifer, because I'm looking for bigger and better things in the future. The development, I'd say there's no cookie cutter approach to doing a development like this. There's no toolkit, there's no grant source that says, send in an application and we'll fund the Recuperative Care Center. We basically had to figure it out ourselves and put the pieces together. To accomplish what we envisioned, we knew we would need to work outside of the box and build upon our experience and the tools that we'd used in the past to make it happen. Now, this development has 4 separate ownership groups, 4 separate investors, 4 different lenders. It's a $46 million project funded by 8 different foundations and 500 individual donors. There are 4 governmental entities that provided funding for the project and 3 different types of tax credits. It took actually 8 legal teams to negotiate and put the documents together to make this a reality. So putting a structure together like this is clearly a labor of love. The Recuperative Care Center will provide 75 medical respite beds, recuperative care for persons experiencing homelessness who end up hospitalized due to an acute medical condition while they're on the streets, and if housed, would be discharged to home, but who cannot be safely discharged to the streets. without bad outcomes. Nor to the shelters, because the shelters are not equipped to deal with those medical needs. Now, we've all heard horror stories of people being discharged in hospital garb, to bus stops, to park benches, to shelters and day centers that were not equipped to serve them without the resources they needed to follow up on their care. Too many people were re-hospitalized or worse. And the desperation from those experiencing homelessness, as well as those serving them in the shelters, and those in the hospital systems that really had no place for them to go, demonstrated the need for this type of facility. Now, the coalition will provide 24-hour supervised care with nursing, medical care, behavioral health supports, and social work and housing counseling to be able to connect people to ongoing primary health care and integrated health care, both through the Stout Street Health Center and other places, and ultimately to get them on the path to long-term housing after their recuperative care stay. Now, this component was financed with New Markets tax credits, leveraging the donation of the City and County of Denver, the Colorado Division of Housing, Colorado Health Foundation, the Anschutz Foundation, WAG and Annalise Shore, the Wells Fargo Foundation, Colorado Access, Fidelity Foundation, and the Phillips Family Foundation, as well as hundreds of individual donors who contributed to the cause. The Corporation for Supportive Housing and CHAFA's Colorado Growth Revitalization Fund allocated their New Markets allocation to this project, and the Northern Trust Company invested $6 million in return for the New Markets tax credits as part of their investment. Again, very complicated structure. Now, the funding for the operations and the services, that was another thing we had to solve for. Again, no cookie cutter solution. And so the funding will actually come from a variety of sources. The clinical care will be funded through Medicaid and Medicare and other insurance resources. And the funding for the operating support, the room and board, the food that will be prepared and served in this room, will come from our hospital partners. And to date, we have commitments from hospitals who are basically paying to reserve a bed for folks who are now staying longer than needed at their hospital and cannot be safely discharged because of their conditions, because of their lack of housing. Now, we expect to be able to document significant savings to these health systems, savings in costs to Medicaid and Medicare by reducing hospital lengths of stay, as well as by reducing avoidable hospital readmissions, and all the while improving the health outcomes of those that we're serving. Now, to raise enough money to build a supportive housing up above, and why build a building if you can't build housing above it? We had to combine the competitive 9% low-income housing tax credits with private activity bonds and the 4% tax credits that come with that in order to keep the financing separate in order to meet IRS regulations. So when the contractors and the financiers and everyone, they basically had to look at this as financing 3 separate building projects with one general contractor and separating out all of those costs. Now, Enterprise Community Partners provided the syndication for the tax credits, and Northern Trust Company provided the investment of about $16 million in return for the LIHTC low-income tax credits. And First Bank provided the construction loan to be able to build the supportive housing units. To fund the development of the supportive housing, we also had the support of Denver Housing Authority through the D3 bond program. And I should say that this is a program that Robin Knich, our councilwoman, helped us shepherd through, and the mayor supported, that created a vehicle to be able to acquire land for permanent supportive housing. And so Denver Housing Authority actually owns the land under the building, and leases it to us for 99 years at $1 a year. So that was a pretty good deal, but we've committed to keep this affordable for 99 years. To coordinate all these separate ownership groups, we had to create a Legacy Planned Community Association and a Planned Community Association declaration to be able to keep all of these separate but coordinated. And the coalition will be the managing entity for all of those ownership entities. So while it's separate, it's combined. We'll meet all of our compliance requirements, but we'll make sure that everyone is well served. We'd show you an organizational chart, but we haven't figured out how to put it down on a two-dimensional piece of paper. So. Now we've chosen the target for housing at the Renaissance Legacy Lofts, people experiencing homelessness who are high utilizers of emergency health care and emergency services, including the jails. And we've been fortunate to be able to incorporate funding through the Housing to Health initiative, funded through the Social Impact Partnership for Pay Results Act. Say that along with me. Also fondly known as CIPRA, which is a 7-year Pay for Success program that was initially funded through social investment by Northern Trust, Colorado Access, Denver Health Foundation, Gary Community Ventures, Colorado Trust, and Kaiser Permanente, that will provide assertive community treatment services and supportive housing to individuals referred to us as a way to keep them housed and to keep them out of those emergency service systems. The Urban Institute will do a randomized controlled trial evaluation to compare the outcomes of those we house with those who are not housed. And modeled after this highly successful Denver Social Impact Bond, the CIPRA funds will be used by the city and from the Department of Treasury to then repay those social investors who are putting up the money to get the program off the ground. So again, nothing simple, right? But what it'll do is provide the wraparound care that is so critical to meet the needs of people with these high vulnerabilities, the extreme medical conditions, co-occurring mental health, addictions, et cetera. So like they say, it truly does take a village to do a project like this. Now, when we had a grand opening for our Renaissance at North Colorado Station apartments in Park Hill in 2016, then Governor John Hickenlooper was there for the dedication. And after I introduced him, he said, you know, I've known Parvensky for about 20 years, and I've always thought he was a pain in the ass. He said, and you know, I think he still is kind of a pain in the ass, but he knows how to get things done. So after you finished his talk, I thanked the governor, and I told him I committed to continuing to be a pain in the ass until all Coloradans had a safe place to call home. So that's it. Now, I never had to have that experience with our next speaker, because we worked together even before she was elected to the Colorado General Assembly some 30 years ago. In fact, Congresswoman Diana DeGette has been a strong supporter of ours over the years. And when we asked her for her help on this building, she advocated for and obtained a $2 million congressionally designated spending allocation from HRSA funds to help complete the financing stack for this project. So it's my pleasure to introduce Congresswoman Diana DeGette.
Thank you so much, John. There will be a quiz at the end of the press conference as to how the financing for this project was. And anybody who gets 75% of it right will win a prize. So I really want to thank you, John, for hosting this event. And I want to thank you for your years of service to this community. And also all of your whole team here at the Coalition for the Homeless. It really, when you listen to him talk about the creative solutions that he and his team find, the public-private partnerships that he engages in. It's just mind-boggling what he can pull together for our community. And the vast number of people who are experiencing homelessness, not just in my congressional district of Denver, but around the state. And it's a model, and I think many of you know this, but I will say this. John Parvinsky and his team present a model for how to address this complex problem of homelessness throughout our country. And we just want to thank you. There will be many, many more times of thanks, but I think we should give John a big. So a couple of years ago, when Congress reinstituted what they call member-directed spending, formerly known as earmarks, I decided to put my efforts onto something as John said, that I had been working on since the 1980s when I was a lawyer practicing law here in Denver, and that is addressing the persistent and difficult issue of homelessness. As John said, this has been something that if there was an easy solution, we would have found it by now. It's a very tough and complex solution, and what we are seeing today is just part of this puzzle that we're putting together, because this started as a single health center, but now the Coalition for the Homeless has grown into a vital organization that helps more than 18,000 people across the state every year. With this new facility, as you heard, it's going to be able to provide help to hundreds of more people right here in the heart of Denver, and at a time where they're the most vulnerable and susceptible to issues, right when they get released from the hospital. So what makes this recuperative care facility so unique, it's not necessarily just the number of people it will serve, but also the type of care that it will provide. And it will fill one of those important gaps that I've been talking about. As you heard from John, as part of the $13.3 million that I was able to secure last year for different projects across the metro area, $2 million of it was for this project here, because it's really hard to imagine what it would be like to be homeless every day, but then to have to deal with what it means to be injured or recovering from a major sickness. So this facility here, as you heard, it will provide care for 75 patients at a time, which will give them the support they need to get back on their feet. As you heard from John, it will also have counselors to help arrange longer-term care for those folks, including at the new Renaissance Legacy Lofts. And it's a critical safety net for those experiencing homelessness, but it's also a critical resource for our hospitals and emergency rooms, because what's happening is if folks just need to be released but they need a little bit of care, if you don't have a home to go to, if you don't have a caretaker to help take care of you, then you're stuck there in the hospital. And what that means is more expense for the hospital, more expense for Medicaid and Medicare, but also a bed that could be going to somebody else. And so this is a win-win situation for those individuals who will be able to be released here and get the care they need, and also for our healthcare providers. Studies show that when you have supportive housing like this, it can reduce homelessness by 33%. And it also reduces the number of days people spend in a hospital by 23% and cuts in half the amount of time that they spend in a nursing home. I think that's pretty incredible. And so I really want to thank everybody for the collaboration that we have in this community. And I will tell you, being in Congress, when I came to the Appropriations Committee last year for the $13.3 million and explained what we do here in this community with our federal, state, and local governments and with our coalition partners in the private sector, they were absolutely bowled over by it. What we do here is unique. This year, I've applied for many more millions of dollars than 13 that I'm sorry to tell you, it's still stuck over there in the Senate. That's the story of that's like our mantra. But I believe that when we see the final 2023 budget, we will have even more money for projects impacting the homelessness, because truly this is something that should be on the top of our list. And I know it's on the list of everybody in this room. So thank you again. Thanks to John and your entire team. This is a wonderful day for our community.
So the city and county of Denver has been a partner in 10 different supportive housing developments we've done over the years. And Mayor Hancock has been a huge supporter, both through his advocacy for the Denver Social Impact Bond, but also with the creation of the Department of Housing Stability, or HOST, as well as providing financing to all three components of this project, as well as the support and participation in the CIPRA project that I announced earlier. So it's great to have Mayor Michael Hancock here to celebrate with us. They've made such a difference to make this happen. Michael Hancock, Mayor.
Thanks, John. You bet. Thank you all so much, and we have a long list of speakers, so I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, but I do have two assignments. One is to speak of this project, and I want to congratulate John, and I'll come back to John in just a moment, and Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, Congresswoman DeGette, who truly has been and just an absolutely amazing partner with all of us, and with the return of creating new opportunities in Congress to bring money back home. She has been steadfast in working collaboratively and asking the question, what do we need to do? What do you need me to do? And then she's gone and put on the gloves and went and fought on our behalf. And so to Congresswoman, thank you so very much. This is not the first and certainly won't be the last one as she does this with us. We're going to hear from our administrator in just a moment as well from the Department of HUD. And we're so excited for Dominique Jackson, a former legislator here in Colorado. But HUD has also been a tremendous partner, DHA. Everyone's been named, CHAFA. Homelessness is just as complex. The issue of homelessness for even one individual is just as complex as the financing stack it took to get this done. And in this room, there are so many champions and partners. And I just want to celebrate one person in particular, along with Congresswoman DeGette. She's on the clock just like I am, 283 days before we leave office. But Councilwoman Robin Kanish has been a fighter. She's been a fighter for the powerless, the voiceless in our community. Dogged. And I got to tell you, I'm really nervous when people like Robin Kanish leave government. I support term limits, but when we lose institutional knowledge, and really just a personal passion for what's right and what government ought to be doing, she's going to walk out the door, and we're going to miss her. So let's be smart and elect people who work just like she does and brings it personal like she brought it. So thank you, Councilwoman Kanish, and thank you for being here. Listen, I used to tell this story, and so the numbers may be a little off because my brain doesn't work in terms of long memories. We did a number one day, and one year we did an analysis and found that I had delivered 750 speeches at over 1,200 events. And trying to remember everything you say is just amazing, and I can't. But John mentioned the Social Impact Bond Program. We found that there is a secret sauce to dealing with our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness. And it's the comprehensive approach. It's what we're doing here. But it was a baseline study that we did in 2012, 2013, where we found 250 people experiencing homelessness who were housing insecure. And those same 250 people did something like this. They had an amazingly expensive cycle from the street to the hospital, the emergency room, back to the street to the jailhouse, back to the street to detox. Those 250 people accounted for 2,400 visits to the emergency room in 1 year, 2,600 visits to detox in 1 year, and some 1,400 nights in jail for a year Those numbers don't take, it's close. But they cost the taxpayers of this city some $11 million a year, 250 people. Judges, paramedics, sheriffs knew them by their first name. It's an expensive cycle. And what this project here at Legacy and with the health program tied to it helps us to do, along with the social impact bond program, is to break that expensive cycle. If they're coming to see the jail 2,600 nights a year or 2,400 nights a year, we at that time was like $91 a night. And so you multiply that over 250 people. You get to see the costs. We break that cycle. And that's what we're doing with this project. Why the city of Denver was so proud to invest our host dollars, our housing money, some $4.1 million, and to be a part of the catalyst stacking to make this happen. And so we're proud to be here today, and I want to acknowledge the presence of Britta Fisher, no one greater, and the entire housing stability team who work tirelessly every day to not only help those who are experiencing homelessness on our streets, to change the narrative that people don't want to be housed, indeed they do, but also say we must connect them with critical services. It breaks my heart to hear people being released from our hospital without a place to go. And starting this year, we no longer do it in our detention facilities in the city of Denver. I simply ask the question, are we helping or adding to the challenges? When do we ask, where are you going when you leave here? And so we're doing assisted services while people are being detained in our facilities. And we're doing everything while they're in our care to try to connect them with housing and other services. And so that's our thinking. We got to think differently about this thing. And so I'm extremely proud to be here with you on behalf of the city of Denver. John, you have been a tremendous partner. Coalition for the Homeless have been tremendous. I've known John now for over 15 years, and I always thought he was a pain in the ass. In fact, he is absolutely still a pain in the ass. But you learn in this job that there are some pains in the ass worth tolerating. And today, John will be the first to say this is not about him. But for 30 seconds, let's make it about him. John, the people of Denver want to present to you a proclamation. And I'm not going to read it because I know you'll be like, it's not about me. But if you would, before people leave here today, leave this proclamation on display because it talks about all that you've done as you prepare for retirement. But I want you to know that by the power vested in me, I have proclaimed this day to be known as John Parvinsky Day in Denver, Colorado. Hold on. Wait. Just keep standing. But hold on. I've had the honor of presenting the city coin, which is our highest honor, to some of our great dignitaries around this nation. I'm going to take the plastic off of it. But only 100 of these coins have been minted. And over the last 11 and a half years, I've handed them to people who make extraordinary difference in the life of our city. John, I have yet to meet, and I presented this coin to President Obama, President Clinton, President Carter, to former, you remember you heard the movie The Lone Survivor in the Afghan War? Presented it to him, Marcus Luttrell. Stevie Wonder has one. That was just my way to get backstage and be Stevie. But he did put on a great concert that night. But no one has done more for our city and for the people of our state than you have. Thank you for standing in the gap for all of us. Now you can stand up.
Well, the mayor is right about one thing, and that is it's not about me. Much of the funding for, and thank you so much. I mean, it's truly humbling to have that proclamation, to receive the coin. I'll say a few words at the end of my talk about how I'm feeling as I as I look into riding into the sunset. But again, thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate that. Much of the funding for our supportive housing and all supportive housing developments comes through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, either directly or through funding that they provide to the city and the states. And so we're pleased to have Regional Administrator of HUD, Dominique Jackson, here to say a few words.
Thank you, John. I have nothing for you. But love. Lots of it.
That's all we need is love.
Hi, everybody. I am very happy to be here on behalf of Secretary Marcia L. Fudge and to represent the Biden-Harris administration's efforts to address America's housing needs. So I don't need to tell you that it has been a pretty difficult couple of years here. Some 580,000 of our neighbors had no place to go during COVID. Beyond just being a devastating health crisis, the pandemic also had devastating economic effects, often on our most vulnerable community members. I think we all know this. And that is, of course, why developments just like this one are vital to addressing the homelessness crisis that we are all facing. This project brings to life the spirit of HUD's mission as well, by creating life-changing housing opportunities for people experiencing homelessness, while also providing social services, supportive services that can save lives. So there are a lot of people, I think there's a few of them in this room, who understand what actually works when it comes to helping people who are experiencing homelessness and those who are exiting our healthcare system. It is developing an entire circle or a system of services that aren't siloed. So Stout Street, we have heard, will have an enormous capacity. Just imagine all of the nurses and the social workers and the behavioral health care providers who are going to be running around this building, helping people to become their best selves. And the Renaissance Legacy Lofts, lifting up the much-needed supply of permanent affordable housing. Together, that circle will help our most vulnerable community members move from homelessness to healthy to housed. Although a number of resources, okay, quiz time, go into making affordable housing a reality, we all know that HUD does like to help out when it can. Of course, we can't do that without our friends over here in Congress. But I'll give you some numbers. Write them down. In fact, construction financing for the Renaissance Legacy Lofts includes over $2.5 million of HUD dollars, came in the form of City of Denver Home Investment Partnership Program funds. Say that fast. In addition, the HUD Continuum of Care Program grant for permanent supportive housing contains $1.8 million. Nationally, to address the critical shortage of quality affordable housing, our president's fiscal year 23 budget proposes an unprecedented $50 billion in mandatory funding for state and local housing finance agencies. The president is also asking for more low-income housing tax credits to help close gaps in our market. Okay, so here's some not-so-new news. I know many are concerned about private investors buying everything up. I'm just going to talk about housing here. That's why HUD is taking action, holding note sales for vacant FHA properties just for mission-driven nonprofit agencies. I think there's a few of those in the room, as well as state and local governments, so that all of you and your neighbors, our collective community, can own a piece of that American dream. HUD is also taking a series of actions as part of the administration's plan to create, preserve, and sell nearly 100,000 additional affordable homes across the country over the next 3 years. And when we talk about community, I want you to know that this administration and Secretary Marcia Fudge recognize and want to right the wrongs that have impacted everyone, but especially the historical ones that have plagued Black and brown communities. In April, HUD released our equity plan. This plan includes actions to reduce the racial homeownership gap with an emphasis on acknowledging and correcting a racial discrimination in federal programs, including housing programs. This plan also aims to center equity in the delivery of services to people experiencing homelessness. We are talking across races and ethnicities, by individuals, families, young, old, male, female, transgender, and gender nonconforming. It is a very troubling and very real fact that within these populations, some people are less likely to have a safe access to homeless shelters, and some are likely to experience homelessness for more extended periods of time. HUD is working hard to counter this by, among other things, strengthening our partnerships with the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness and other agencies, improving the collection of race, ethnicity, and gender identity data by analyzing them with a focus on inequality within the system, and implementing client-focused approaches that center equity. Your partners, your partners, your partners, and your partners here at HUD and across the Biden administration are ready to bring federal resources to the table in creative ways with our incredibly talented and creative partners to open doors for all families. So I want to thank the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. I very much want to thank John Parvinsky for inviting me to speak about HUD's work. And I want to extend a huge thank you to everybody here in this room, because you all had a hand in making this incredibly innovative project come to life. You are all changing lives. Know that. And you are all saving lives. Know that too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we move on to the Division of Housing, I want to acknowledge our Senator Julie Gonzalez, who's here. She represents my home district as well as here, so thanks for being here. Also want to acknowledge one of our donors who made a significant capital contribution to make the project happen, WAG and Annalee Shore, who are here. Thank you. Now, the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, Division of Housing, has been a strong partner of the coalition over all of our developments throughout the state. They have provided funding for this project through both investment in the private activity bond portion of the housing as well as in the Recuperative Care Center. And I'm pleased to introduce Alison George, who's the director of the Colorado Division of Housing, who's been just a great partner. Alison.
Legacy. I just have to say, and I've actually been thinking, how am I going to stand up here in front of all these people and talk about legacy? because this is such an appropriate name for this development. Because it's not just the tens of thousands, likely hundreds of thousands of lives that you hold a legacy with and you've impacted. It's me. It's everybody in this room. It's your commitment. It's your dedication. It's your perseverance. I should be looking at you, actually. But that is going to live on, and that is really your legacy. The Colorado Division of Housing and DOLA is very committed to this cause, and a true believer, so much so that I think about every aspect of this development we're supporting, which isn't unusual, because what we like to do is we like to sit down with a developer and figure out, how can we get this done? I can remember sitting down at the Colorado Health Foundation with you when you brought all the hospitals together for the first time and talked about how can Medicaid support the people that we're trying to serve. So we helped fund the recuperative care, which was incredibly needed. The idea, think of yourself having a procedure at a hospital, having no place to go. What are your chances of success in actually healing? You need a roof. You need that bed and that support of the people around you. That is what you have built here, is you have built that support network, not just in the people that will be working in this building, with the people that will be living in this building, is supporting one another, because that's what's been one of the most amazing things for me to see, is the collective support that residents provide each other. So yes, we helped with the housing in constructing it. Yes, we help with the vouchers to help support the ongoing operations. We actually are helping fund the tenant support services. So the tenant supports the services to help people housed. These are all needed together, braided together, to provide the solutions that will continue as your legacy into the future. That said, we have a lot of work to do. Oh, it's kind of hot up here, actually, with the sun up here. But that said, we have a lot of work to do. And it's not because for lack of good work. I've worked with many of you in this room, and I'm so impressed. But when in the state of Colorado, we do not produce housing for everybody in the last 10 years, we've had a reduction, almost 40% in the last 10 years of housing production. That's not just affordable housing, that's all housing. Of course we're gonna have a problem. We have to be producing more housing, serving more people. There's a direct line from the cost of housing increasing to increases in homelessness in a community. Colorado is seeing that. Denver is seeing that. And it is the commitment of all of you. It is the legacy of your work and the commitment that we all have that will make an impact. And so thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. So hopefully you've had a chance to see the exterior of this beautiful building as you came in. You'll have a chance to tour after we're done speaking here in a few minutes. And a lot of thought and effort goes into the planning and the design of a multi-use facility like this, as you can imagine. I want to acknowledge Christopher Carvel Architects for their architectural service and design services to bring our vision into reality. Chris, where are you? Thanks. Now, we always try to design and build buildings that fit into the fabric of the neighborhood, the character of the neighborhood, and to look like market rate housing and market rate facilities. This gives residents a sense of pride, and it helps to reduce the stigma that is often associated with affordable housing. And I hope you agree that this building meets that standard. Now, when we first started developing on this site, or talking about developing, and we're building the Renaissance downtown lofts just across the street, we met some NIMBY opposition. Neighbors thought that we would scare off market rate housing if we built supportive housing and other healthcare facilities in the neighborhood. And we'd scare off that market rate development. Well, you only have to look out the window to see that since we started these efforts, that more than 2,500 market rate apartments have been built within 3 blocks of this site, and many more are on the drawing boards. So I don't think we've scared anyone away. As you can imagine, building a 9-story building like this during the pandemic can be very challenging. And we've had a few setbacks, delays in getting the building completed. However, this isn't the first time that that's happened. When we had the grand opening for our original Stout Street Clinic back in 1989, comedian Billy Crystal was there along with cable pioneer Bill Daniels to commemorate the opening. And we worked through the weekend to finish the painting and to put the finishing touches on the clinic. It was a renovation of an old warehouse for a Monday morning grand opening. And just before the start of the program, Billy Crystal's manager came running up to me and said, "Quick, quick, Billy Crystal's in the bathroom, and there's no toilet paper." So we evidently had forgotten to cover all bases. So I went scurrying around, and all I could find was paper towels. And so I brought paper towels back to the manager, and he says, "Are you crazy? Billy Crystal's a star. He can't use paper towels." But everything worked out in the end, and the program went on. So we hopefully and I did check, the bathrooms are well stocked this morning. I want to acknowledge, though, Millender White, who has been the general contractor on this project, have built the building from the ground up. They've been working long hours to finish the construction, a couple of setbacks, some challenging building inspections, but they're just about at the end of the road. It was great to be able to have everyone in the building to celebrate. And again, we know that doing this at any point in time is not easy. Doing it during the pandemic with supply chain issues, workforce issues make it that much more difficult. But I want to acknowledge Elvis Brooks, Matt Jones, Crystal Terrazas, Chris Nutt, Brandon Rockford, and Taylor Osgood from Millender White for their hard work in bringing this project to completion. Thank you. Now, as you heard probably through my description of the financing of this, the name Northern Trust kept coming up. They provided pre-development funding for us. They brought the tax credits, the new market tax credits. They invested in the LIHTC tax credits. They were the lead social investor in the SIPR program, and they were also in the SIB program. And they've helped us to leverage millions and millions of dollars to complete this project. And Northern Trust, and particularly Debbie Casemeyer, who is just a dynamo, if you don't know her, has been just so supportive of us over the last decade that it's just been great. And unfortunately, she was not able to join us today. But we have Tom Riley, her colleague from Northern, who's a member of our board of directors, here to say a few words. Tom?
John. Thanks, John, and I'm glad to step in for Debbie on short notice, and I'll keep my remarks short, but it sure is a wonderful opportunity for Northern Trust to be a part of the community where we operate. And Debbie is in our Chicago office, and I'm here in our Colorado office. And just to see the work the coalition does and to be a part of it, you know, John describes himself as humble, and I would describe me the same way every time I'm in a board meeting or walking the streets around our housing. It's quite a privilege to be a part of it. And as the banker in the room at our board meetings, the financing stacks that they're describing, I feel like I am supposed to understand that, and it always is quite a challenge. So I wish I could help a little bit more, but anyway, it's really nice to be here today, and thanks so much for the work that we're doing.
So when you're the CEO of a dynamic, mission-driven organization like the Coalition, you end up getting a lot of credit for the work that you don't actually do. I've had the privilege of working with some of the most talented and dedicated staff over the years who have been able to take my ideas and vision and bring it into reality. And not only that, but to make it work and to adapt it and to struggle with it and just to say, why did he do this? And figure out a way to make it work. So I want to acknowledge all of the staff, but first I want to start by acknowledging our housing development staff and Jennifer Cloud, who's our new Chief Real Estate Officer, and her team, Jay Hans, who was the manager on this project, Max Lebarsky, and Bill Windsor, who has been our lead developer over the last 20 years. So let's give the housing development team a hand. Hopefully you'll see, you've been able to see them. I can't see them right now, but oh, Jennifer, she's hiding in the back. There they are. I also want to acknowledge our program staff who really rarely get credit for the tremendous work that they do. Lisa Thompson is our Chief Operating Officer that oversees all of our programs. Carrie Craig, who oversees all of our supportive housing work now. Mariah Nunnally, who is the director of the Recuperative Care Center, who has been instrumental. And, you know, and I could name another 100 people, but I won't. I'll just collectively say there are literally hundreds of case managers, peers, nurses, doctors, medical assistants, dental assistants, social workers, case managers who work tirelessly every day to not only help find people on the streets in need of housing, but to then connect them to that housing or shelter resource, connect them to the health care they need. And once we get somebody in housing, and this is really the piece that often gets lost, you think that, well, once we put somebody in housing, we can just walk away and say, job done. But that's not the case. Our assertive community treatment teams, our residential services teams, our family support service teams, they work tirelessly to make sure that whenever there's a bump in the road that would likely lead to someone losing their housing, that they're there working to help them work through those challenges so that they don't end up back on the street and we have to start that process all over again. They're the ones who are the ones making these programs special and successful, and they're changing lives. Thank you all for what you do. You are all amazing. Is Louise Boris here? She wasn't able to make it. Well, Louise was our chief program officer for 20 years, and I wanted to acknowledge her because we kind of came up with this crazy idea together while she was here. So thank you, Louise, for your vision and support as well. And of course, we could not do this work without the strong support of our board of directors. I've had the pleasure of working for a board that has supported me in taking risks and doing whatever was needed to help those in need. They've sat through hours of presentations about tax credits and financing structures and about limited partners and other such things that they probably didn't think they were getting into when they joined the Homeless Coalition Board. But I'm pleased to introduce Joel Neckers, who's our current board chair, and T.R. Reed, who's our past board chair, to say a few words.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, John. I'm T.R. Reed, and Joel Neckers, our board chairman, and I are here to thank the person who made today possible, John Parvensky. I'm a reporter. Reporters love stories, and John Parvensky is a good story. It starts in 1985. A young couple from the East came to Denver and checked into the Bugs Bunny Motel on West Colfax because that was the only place that John and Tenley Parvensky could afford. John started helping out in a tiny little cramped two-bed free clinic in what was then a slum neighborhood of Denver. It's actually right across around the corner, that was run by the Sisters of Loretto. And over the next 37 years, he built that tiny clinic into a $100 million operation that provides attractive permanent housing, comprehensive medical care, child care, substance abuse training, employment training, and many other services to thousands of Coloradans each year who are down on their luck. That two-bed free clinic has grown into, as John said, 22 buildings with thousands of units of housing. This beautiful healthcare facility over here with several satellite clinics around the city and the state. And years ago, somebody said to John, some of the people on the street can't get to our clinics. He said, okay, we'll take health care to them, and built the HOP van, the Health Outreach Program. Is that what HOP is? Built vans to take doctors and nurses to people on the street who couldn't get to our clinics. During COVID-19, people on the street were dangerously at risk for this disease. John put up 24-hour shelters out at the rodeo center, and he put 800 people in hotel rooms all over the city. The hotels were empty, so let's use them for something we need. One year we built a new housing building, I think a 100-unit building over on Colfax, East Colfax, and it's right on Colfax Avenue, and we thought, whoa, this is great. You know, we're gonna rent out the retail space on Colfax. It'll be great, a big source of income. And it was right during the recession, and nobody wanted to rent it, so John put in a pizza restaurant. Coalition for the Homeless put in a pizza restaurant. We employed dozens and dozens of our clients, and about 40 of them moved on to permanent jobs in the restaurant industry. That's what he does. And then his basic rule is, as I think you can hear, is let's get the job done. Let's help people who need help. And you've heard about the ridiculously complicated financing for this building. John would come to the board of directors and he'd show these charts, and there were blue boxes and red triangles and green lines and dotted lines and circles and parentheses. We couldn't understand it, and the board chairman was totally befuddled by this. And so I said to John, this is great that we're doing this, but couldn't it be simpler? Does it have to be this hard? And John said to me, we want to build this project, and to do that, this is what it takes, so let's do it. And we did, and here we are today with this incredibly complicated but valuable property. Now, because of that, John Parvensky has made the city of Denver and the state of Colorado national leaders in the area of helping people down on their luck, of helping the homeless. And the nation has recognized this. As he said, presidents have come here, cabinet members have come here, members of Congress, leaders in the housing industry all over the country come here to figure out how we do this, how we get this done. And as a result, people have recognized John. He's been introduced into the National Housing Finance Hall of Fame, the National Healthcare for Homeless Hall of Fame. Housing Colorado gave him an award. This is embargoed, and I'm not allowed to say this, but maybe shortly he'll be named the most admired CEO in Colorado. We'll see, we'll see. And therefore, On behalf of our thousands of clients all over the state of Colorado, on behalf of our 700-member staff, our donors, several of them here today, our board of directors, our business partners, our government partners, on behalf of the city of Denver, the whole state of Colorado, and everybody in the United States who cares about helping the homeless, we want to thank you. And to tell you how we're going to thank you, I want to introduce our board chairman, Joel Neckers.
Good afternoon, everyone, and Tom, thank you for those remarks and your years of leadership and service to the board, which helped bring us here today. To John and the entire staff, many of whom I see sitting in the audience, this is yet again another incredible accomplishment. In the decades plus that I've been involved with this organization, the decade plus, I've marveled time and again over how John and his team of now 800 strong individuals envision a product, then go out and somehow find the land, find the money, find the financing, and put together what, to say it's an incredibly complex deal, would be the understatement of the day. And then they build a world-class facility like we're in right now, on time and on budget, or at least usually so. In all seriousness, building this first of its kind facility is the kind of thing that we've come to expect of John and his team, and probably unfairly so, because the coalition has done it repeatedly over and over again over the years. Unfortunately, John has announced that he will retire as soon as the board finds a suitable replacement, which is a reminder that all good things must come to an end. But John, your legacy leaves huge shoes to fill. But with your assistance with the upcoming transition and the incredibly strong position with which you are leaving the organization, I am confident that the coalition's best years remain ahead of us. For many years, the board has been contemplating how to honor John's more than 37 years of service to this great organization. We ultimately determined that there wasn't enough signage available to recognize the extensive contributions he has made to fulfilling the mission of this organization. But at the urging of Charles Savage, who's sitting in the audience today, the board decided that the naming of the Recuperative Care Center after him was at least probably the least we could do, because it represents the innovation, compassionate care, and integration of housing and health that John has been so committed to during his time at CCH. In my mind, this building almost perfectly encapsulates the work John has done in Colorado over the past 40 years. So in recognition of all he has accomplished, I think it's fitting and important to recognize the John Pravensky Recuperative Care Center will save lives, further the coalition's mission of creating a lasting solution for those experiencing homelessness, and create a stronger community for decades to come, all things that have driven John over the course of his career. So John, on behalf of the entire board and the organization, I want you to know how grateful we are for the leadership and vision that you have defined your career and that brings us here today. And so we give you the John Parvensky Recuperative Care Center.
Thank you, Joel. Thanks, Tom. Truly, I'm humbled by this honor. Nobody goes into this work to serve people experiencing homelessness, looking for accolades and getting buildings named after them. I appreciate the acknowledgement, and I'm so proud to have been able to do this work over the last 37 years. And I agree that I think I'm leaving the organization strong. It's ready for a new generation of leaders. I think we have them in place, and I'm excited to see what they're able to do without my weight around their necks. I also want to acknowledge my wife, Tenley Stillwell, who's here, and my daughter, Michelle Stillwell-Parvinsky. Tenley has been my partner in life and partner in social justice work for the last 44 years. And Michelle has charted her own path advocating for children in poverty. They both have been my inspiration and the loves of my life, so I really thank them. And so in closing, I know we've gone over time. While we celebrate today, I always have to come back to what Alison reminded us of, that despite what we've accomplished so far, there's just so much more that needs to be done. There's still 1,000 people on the streets who will call their home, the streets their home tonight, and another 2,000 in emergency shelter. And I do want to actually clarify something. Tom gave me credit for the National Western Shelter. That wasn't me. That was a collaborative effort, and some of the partners are in the room here. The Homeless Leadership Council and Department of Host. We all collaboratively came together to solve a problem. And so, and similarly in the hotels was a collaboration with us, with Host, with Salvation Army. And so it's been a collaboration all through the years, and I can't let that go without mention. But again, we have those folks who are still in need of long-term supportive housing or long-term affordable housing of their own. So we're committed to make that happen. We hope that you'll continue to support us in those efforts, and as my time comes near, we're not slowing down. We purchased the old La Quinta Inn. We call it the Park Avenue Inn now. We'll continue to operate it as activated respite non-congregate shelter for another year or two, and then we hope to build up to 200 units of supportive and permanent housing on that site in a great location. And we're under contract to buy a 215-room hotel with a full kitchen and conference facility where we can provide both long-term and short-term transitional and supportive housing. So we hope to count on your support to achieve those milestones and whatever else our staff comes up in with the future. So thank you very much. I appreciate you.
My name is Jeff Olivet, and I'm Executive Director of the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. We're the only federal agency solely dedicated to preventing and ending homelessness in the United States. We hold the collective power of 19 other federal agencies that serve on our council, and we use that power to set a national homelessness strategy and help local and state leaders like you. I wish I could be there with you in person, but I wanted to make sure you know how much we appreciate you and to share with you where we are and where we're headed in our work to end homelessness. Congratulations to all of you on the opening of the Renaissance Legacy Lofts and the Stout Street Recuperative Care Center. What an amazing accomplishment. I can't wait to be there one day with you. I've been in this field for nearly 30 years as a street outreach worker, a case manager, a researcher, a trainer, and now head of a federal agency. And one thing is clear. We live in unprecedented times. Homelessness was a deadly public health crisis before the pandemic, and the pandemic has only made our work more urgent. These once-in-a-generation challenges have required new partners, new funding, and new models for shelter, housing, healthcare, and services. As we continue in this work, I am deeply grateful to people like you who have had the resilience to endure the exhaustion, the trauma, and the uncertainty of the last few years. I want to offer special thanks to my friend John Parvinsky. John, your legacy is here, not only in steel, glass, and concrete, but also in the lives of those your work has touched. You were one of the many people who said housing is healthcare, but you have actually made that a reality for thousands of people. You've helped set a path to housing and health for people who may never even know your name. And in the 20 years I've known you, you have taught me so much. You've shaped my thinking about the connections between service and advocacy, between long-term vision and concrete impact. John, thank you. In Colorado and in communities across the country, we've come a long way in some ways, and yet we have a long way to go to end homelessness. In Denver, more than 6,800 people live and suffer without a home every day, with the constant fear of violence, storms, cold, heat, and disease. This is, in many ways, a crisis of our own making. It's the result of past and present policies that have led to systemic racism that excludes and destroys communities of color. These policy decisions have led to a shortage of nearly 7 million affordable homes nationally and 50,000 in the Denver area. And it's led to an economy where working people can't afford a home because their wages are simply not keeping up with rapidly rising rents and mortgage costs. Basic math illustrates our biggest problems. People working full-time for minimum wage earn roughly $25,000 a year, yet the typical two-bedroom in Denver costs $21,000 a year. We're forcing people to choose between paying for rent, food, medicine, or other necessities. And eventually, many have nowhere to go but the shelters and the streets. We need to end homelessness before tents go up, before shelters fill up, before problems arise in neighborhoods, and before people end up in hospitals, jails, or worse. We will not end homelessness until we can actually prevent it. Right now, our society is failing roughly 2,500 people a day who fall into homelessness across the country. The pandemic has proven the power of prevention. Millions of Americans avoided losing their homes with the help of direct stimulus checks, emergency rental assistance, and expanded unemployment and child tax benefits. This year, USICH will release the Biden-Harris administration's federal strategic plan to prevent and end homelessness. And this new facility perfectly exemplifies what we hope to accomplish in this country: housing and support for those who need it most. Our plan will be the first to address systemic racism directly, and it will go further than any previous plan to prevent homelessness. We know that homelessness is solvable. You're proving that every day. Every day you prove that people and systems can change. You prove that we can work together to create a new status quo that relies on what works and on what people say they need. This building that you're in is just another chapter of a story defined by commitment, creativity, and a focus on what matters most: people. Thank you for your great work.